Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name, of course, is Csaw or Chris, and today we're talking about World of Warcraft, and more specifically, we're trying to answer the question, is WoW really that bad? Because if you've been on the internet lately, if you've been on YouTube, if you've been on their forums, if you've been on Reddit, if you've been on any kind of MMO forum, you know people are talking smack about Battle for Azeroth, and it's been ongoing for several months, but unlike other things that sometimes improve over time, this has actually kind of gotten worse and worse and worse, and WoW's likely in one of the worst states it's ever been in. And it's troubling because this is actually the first expansion since Cataclysm that I've decided to play World of Warcraft. So do I feel like a sucker? That's the question on everyone's mind, including my own, and the question doesn't really have a clear answer. I mean, I would say kind of, but also I don't know what other game I would be playing instead. Because I can very actively I pay month to month with in-game gold, and I could easily stop it and just go play a different game, and I just haven't. So there's some things they're obviously doing right, or at least that no other game's fulfilling for me. And we're going to try and really narrow down what that might be. So let's give a little bit of a backstory. I came back to World of Warcraft because A, games that I were playing died, such as Wildstar, rest in peace. B, other games that I played, I had kind of gotten to the top of progression, and I knew they weren't going to be putting more gear in. Specifically here I'm talking about Guild Wars 2. I absolutely love raids in Guild Wars 2. I love how they feel. I love the story behind them. I, however, crave some vertical gear progression. And once I have full ascended, like the best gear I'm going to have, and I know that they're not going to introduce new, better gear, I tend to step away from the game for a bit until the new raid comes out. And then even then, I'm just playing it to try out the bosses and try out the story, and then I get tired because I do enjoy that gear grinding feeling. And I know it's such a dirty word in these days to enjoy the grind, to enjoy the treadmill and stuff like that, but I need my game to have a little bit of that in it, and that's why I went back to World of Warcraft, which I used to play back in Cataclysm and Wrath of the Lich King. But when I got back there, it looks like they blew up their entire loot system. And this is my first point of why it's kind of a bad game right now. And it's not even that the system they have is particularly bad, which it's not great. But what frustrates most people, including myself, is that they had a really good system in my mind that seems to have been forgotten about, and now it's a much worse system. Like, if this was their original system, and it's been this way forever, I think there would be much less anger towards it. It's the fact that they used to have tiers, that they used to have armor like designs for each of the classes, that they used to have a vendor that would sell gear for tokens that you would earn at a predictable amount each time you did a dungeon or raid. Now, I could raid for 3 hours, kill all the bosses, do super well, and somehow not get a piece of gear. It's really, really weird. It's really, really, really weird. And it's almost the same case with Mythic Dungeons, which, let's pause here for a second, Mythic Dungeons are something that weren't in the game when I played before. They are a big improvement to the dungeon system. They keep dungeons relevant throughout the entire expansion, and in some cases are much more enjoyable than the raids. So big plus there. And you know what? They're still really good in this expansion. I think the dungeons are quite creative. I think some of the affixes that they have, I think I'm using the right term here. I'm still kind of new. They're quite interesting, and I enjoy them a lot. What I don't enjoy is the way I'm rewarded for playing these dungeons. Now, it's a little bit okay because you get a weekly chest that guarantees you a piece based on the level of the dungeon you complete. So there is a guaranteed piece of gear you get. However, you have to wait until weekly reset to see what that is, which doesn't sound like a terrible thing on paper, But I think what WoW is really doing is they're separating the time of which you complete content to the time of which you're rewarded to complete that content. When I go and receive that loot, it feels really nice, but I don't necessarily attribute it to that specific challenging overcoming like dungeon that I did a couple days ago. Like it just isn't as linked as if I got that piece of gear at the end. Now, and you still can get gear at the end, specifically if you're clearing the key. And there is even a chance, I believe, if you don't clear it. It's just, I liked the idea of consistently knowing what I was going to get. And I think the token system did that on a level that just can't be competed with. The idea that you knew how many tokens you wanted, you could save them up for a specific piece you wanted. It allowed so much character progression and player choice that it felt so rewarding when you did it. So, that's one of the things that I have an issue with. But there's a few more, so let's get into it. The big one, I guess, that we should address is class design. Because I think that is probably the single most complained about thing in Battle for Azeroth is the class design. It's just really bad compared to, once again, what they used to have. And I think that's, once again, why people are so angry about it, is that they had really unique things and they kept building on them. And even in Legion, the most recent expansion, things had gotten to like probably the most interesting and unique place, like where classes had their own weapons that they had skills on and stuff like that. And they've stripped so much away that it feels like we have nothing. It's a recession in terms of player design choices for your class. And it really hurts. Now, as I did with the loot system, WoW actually still has one of the best class systems, even in this worst state. For instance, if I'm playing Guild Wars 2, one of my biggest issues is that you have to play, and you can make your own group, and you can kick and scream, but generally speaking, you have to play a meta class. Like, for instance, you can't be a ranger that's going to shoot with a bow that does power damage. You're just not going to win that fight. And they're making little strides towards fixing these problems, but it's taking them years to even get some classes allowed in raids in that game. Whereas WoW, despite some classes being boring, despite some of them being lackluster, I could play pretty much any spec and get into some raids. I might not be on a world first team. I might not even make it to mythic on some of them, but I'm going to be allowed to do heroic and normal mode pretty much on any class. And there's a lot more choice of classes to actually play as well. So WoW still offers pretty much the most amount of selection I could want there. There are some other games like Final Fantasy that do quite well. And it really comes down to if you enjoy the style of that game, the combat of that game. And I'm just more of a WoW person. I even went and tried the free trial or whatever they have to level 35 to see if I was about that game. And I might do a video talking about it and seeing how it was and all that. But I'm certainly more of a World of Warcraft person. And that does come from the fact that I did play it back in Wrath and Cataclysm and really did enjoy it back then. So I'm hoping to make things enjoyable somehow. But yeah, so the class system is still one of the best, but it's so much worse than what it used to be in the game, it hurts. And I think that's the theme for a lot of this video, is that the only reason the game feels so bad is because it actually was so good before and has been made worse. So we'll summarize that at the end. The final point I really wanted to make here was about the features of Battle for Azeroth and what they've really added. So there's some unique things that they add in every expansion. In this one, we have island expeditions, war fronts, allied races, and Azerite gear. Now, I might have just listed 4 of the most complained about things in World of Warcraft right now, and they were core features that they sold in Battle for Azeroth. I'm going to talk about why I dislike each of them in the following few minutes. Let's start with the easiest one, which is Azerite gear. It sort of tags on to our whole idea of not really being able to work towards a specific goal. At the start of this, it was very random, and it felt really bad because you had to hold gear that was higher item level, and that actually goes across even gear that's not Azerite gear. The idea that you can get a higher item level piece of equipment that is significantly worse for your character and just have to keep it in your bag so that your item level is increased is a broken system. There's something wrong with what that is. But Azerite gear had a lot of issues with that, where you couldn't wear it because your necklace wasn't high enough level or whatever. So you had to wait, and then by the time you actually put it on, you might have another piece that you're waiting on, and so on and so on. It just didn't feel very good. They have made some great steps to fix this by introducing a token system to buy the pieces, and they might even do a overhaul. I don't keep up with all the latest trends and news and like PTR and stuff like that. There's rumors of an overhaul or removal of the system eventually further on in the expansion, but it's really made the first part of the expansion very sour for a lot of people, including myself. Warfronts, we talked about already, would be really one of the most impressive pieces of content to come to World of Warcraft that would fit better in this expansion than any other piece of content they could put in had they been player versus player. I can't even tell you how excited I would be to play those. However, they're not player versus player. They are a boring piece of content that you feel very much forced to do because they reward really easy pieces of good gear. So yeah, that's what they are right now, and that's what they continue to be. I don't mind doing them because I do like getting good gear, and I do like that there's a lot of story tied to them. That's a strong point that still happens, even though it's player versus environment. It's, once again, a missed opportunity that makes them really angering. Island Expeditions. I was, at best, lukewarm about these, even before the expansion released, and I haven't done one in about 2 months. So it tells you where I am. They have had a lot of improvements in terms of having, once again, a token system where you can actually buy the rewards instead of them being random. And they have a very good place for leveling, from what I understand as well. So I think in their position they work well. They just don't interest me. They do have a player versus player mode, interestingly, despite the fact I think Warfronts would have been the basket to put the eggs in for that. It's still pretty exciting to do, and I enjoy it on the whole. The last one, which I'm now trying to think of, was Allied Races. I almost forgot, but here we are. Allied Races are probably the thing I hate the most about this expansion. And I'll tell you why. When I played Cataclysm, I was extremely excited to make a Worgen and a Goblin. They were very unique, very different, and released on the date of the expansion. There was no crazy quest lines or reputations I needed to get. They were a feature of the expansion that I got for buying the expansion. And they felt that way. I went on to them. They had a cool story zone that they initially come from, and their sort of story was intertwined with the rest of the expansion as they become part of the Alliance or the Horde. They were done really, really well. I enjoyed it quite a lot. The Allied Races in this expansion are cool because of how many you get. However, they're, kind of just recolors of a lot of the other races. And without druids or shaman totems, there's not a ton of difference in playing them. They're cool if you're like super about one of those races and you're like, I've always wanted to play this, now I get to. Sure. But even then, you've got to go and do a rep grind that might not actually be attached to this expansion, or you have to wait for like what it's going to be like 6 months or 5 months from the launch of this expansion to play the the trolls and the fat humans. Like, it's, I don't know what to say about that. I did not like it as much as I liked the Cataclysm races, and if they had just done two races that were fairly unique. I don't know, like snake people or something like that. It could have been a lot better, I think, and it would have definitely been a feature that I would have been way more excited about. But yeah, that's the end of me complaining. And I hopefully did include some positive aspects as well. There's still so much that WoW offers that no other game does. I think the dungeons are great. I think the raids are some of the best in the MMO world right now and have been for so long. Even if they're not the best raids in WoW, they're still really good for raids out there in the world. I can't I play PvP in ranked arenas. The amount of different battleground types I have are just like there's so many things you can do in World of Warcraft that it's really hard to find a game that directly competes with it. And I think that's where a lot of the value comes from. Another sore place for me that I'll talk a bit more about online. I'll post another little write-up about this in the description below if you want to check it out. But the professions and the gold making was one of the big reasons I came back to WoW. There's still one of the best profession systems in any MMO at the moment. There are better ones, don't get me wrong, but there are ones that I care a lot less about. But they're much worse this expansion too. And it's the fact that all these systems used to be so good at different times in WoW's history and have been made worse for this expansion. That's what you have to take home. So it still might be the best game for you to play, but if you played WoW before, you might be kind of frustrated seeing what the game is now. However, if you're a brand new player, it actually might still be a great game for you to jump into because you don't have that like things were so good in the past kind of ideal when you're looking at everything. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I don't know if I have anyone on the channel that is playing WoW or that's unsubbed to WoW but actively watching it to get hopefully fixed at some point. But share your comments. I'd love to hear it. Until then, guys, I'll see you in the next video. I'm hoping to do one about Guild Wars 2 at some point as well because I've been playing through the new story. But yeah, talk to me in the comments. Let me know what you're playing right now. I'd love to talk to you. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.